it's the comprehensive plan of what we're able to do to be able to put out a message and get our team. I say our team, I'm talking about licensed buying sportsmen and women around the country, our team together to make sure that they're fully aware of the complexities of this particular proposition and how it is not just a mountain lion and bobcat deal, and it can actually set a precedent for how wildlife can be interpretively managed over the course of the rest of my life and damn sure your life and my kid's life. And if he decides to have kids, I mean, this is the defining measure at this particular junction that people say, oh, it's about mountain lions and bobcats. No, it's about hunting. And you can read that in the measure and you can see why people have jumped on board to the epic proportions and the positions that they have over the course of the last 367 days. So we just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and bring people up to speed.
What's going on, guys? Today, this podcast with Dan Gates from Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. And he's helping right now. In November, there's a vote, along with all the other votes that are going on the ballot right now. But there's a vote to ban mountain lion hunting, which in turn will start to ban other hunting down the road. And I want kids like my son Asher here, who's 10. You want to go hunting with me when you grow up, right? Yeah.
50-50.
He doesn't want to do the hard hunts.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're getting there. But either way, whether you want your kids to have the opportunity to hunt or not, this is huge. So if you're in Colorado, definitely make sure you vote no on Proposition 127. If you're not in Colorado, make sure you reach out to friends and family that you have out there and spread this message. Tune into this podcast and understand why, whether you're on the East Coast, the West Coast, in Colorado, outside of Colorado, why this is so important and why this message needs to get out there. I appreciate Dan coming on the podcast and chatting with us again for a second time. And he's been on so many other podcasts getting this information out there. Make sure you spread this message. Enjoy this podcast. Get some of the facts. Go look them up yourselves. I challenge you to do that as well. Don't just take our words for it. Go check it out and make sure that it doesn't pass in Colorado so it doesn't make it to your state. With that being said, let's get into this podcast here with Dan Gates and CRWM. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the RedBeard Outdoors podcast. I'm Jonathan, your host, and here today we've got an amazing guest. He's a repeat guest because, guys, this is a huge conversation that's going on right now, a big battle that Dan is fighting in the background. We've got Dan Gates here from CRWM, Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, and he is not just fighting for Coloradans' rights and privileges of hunting, because there is a mix of those rights and privileges, but also there's a big deal going on right now, guys, that you need to see that it's moving. It seems to be from the West Coast over to the East, where, you know, there's things that are being lost in our rights as hunters and outdoorsmen. And so you may not feel like, maybe you don't go hunt Colorado. Maybe you've heard about how there's so many people, and even though it's got the biggest herd of elk, you don't want to go hunt elk there because there's so many people, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't matter. This is going to come to your state at some point, unfortunately. And we need to be ahead of the curve and leaving things for our children and our grandchildren in a good standing, and setting the blueprint on how to fight these issues that are unfortunately being put forth at the ballot box rather than using science and conservation. So that's what Dan is heading up in a nutshell. We're going to get into a lot of things such as what is trophy hunting? Why are they, putting that in this proposition that's being, proposed there in Colorado? Why that's so important, how we define that, and also what we can do to get on board with Dan and organizations like CRWM and How for Wildlife are the two big people and organizations that are getting after it right now and doing the legwork. You can there's going to be ways that you can donate monetarily or with your time, or simply, again, going in with Hal and signing up for their newsletter and getting involved that way so you can get letters out to your politicians. So all of that being said, that's kind of a big intro here, but Dan is, his beard's a lot more trim. We were talking about how he's been on so many different podcasts now. His his setup's a little bit different from the last time he was on. I appreciate him taking the time coming on and being a guest again to explain more about what's going on, some updates. But Dan, just real quick for people, who are you, man?
Appreciate it, Jonathan. You and I talked about probably close to 6 months ago or somewhere in there. And so My name is Dan Gates. I'm the current executive director for the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. I'm also the campaign chair for Wildlife Deserve Better, which is the main issues committee that's attempting to defeat Proposition 127. For those of your audience that paid attention earlier, it started out as Initiative 91. And we fought that diligently through multiple stages and processes through the Colorado Supreme Court and the Title Board and the Secretary of State's office, and to the tune of several $100,000 and a lot of brain power and bandwidth that disappeared over the 4 or 5 months that we were doing that. But we got to the point to where the opposition gathered the signatures that was needed. And there's a backstory to that. It wasn't a foregone conclusion, but they had some help from the gubernatorial administration in Colorado to be able to accomplish that. And so we're stuck with Proposition 127 that'll be up for the voters of Colorado to make a decision on November 5th, Election Day, to see if they want to ban the harvest of mountain lions and bobcats and undermine science-based wildlife management, responsible wildlife management, and the North American model of wildlife conservation. And if anybody has read the language, this is not a trophy hunting ban. This is a hunting ban, and it specifically mentions that in the title. It refers to the entire initiative, the proposition, as a hunting ban. And while trophy hunting is defined in the measure as intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping a mountain lion or a bobcat, and lynx, we'll get into that very briefly. But if anybody hasn't paid attention to what's going on in Colorado and they're not brought up to speed at this point in time, they will be by the time you and I get done. But we would have hoped that they'd follow us along over the course of the almost, I think it's 367 days now since this thing dropped last year. And in actuality, we are in the exact same spot, personally, where our feet are planted in Las Vegas, Nevada. And when we found out that the initiative had dropped last year on September 22nd, we immediately pulled our forces together and we hired the appropriate teams and the attorneys within 3 days, because CRWM was positioned well enough at that point in time to do that. Mm-hmm. And the reason we're back out here again is because we got a couple meetings with some biologists on mountain lions, and tomorrow we will do our 80th podcast with Go Hunt, the guys over there, and looking forward to seeing Brady and Trail and Lorenzo and Chris. But you're the 79th podcast that we've done this year. They will be the 80th. And it's the comprehensive plan of what we're able to do to be able to put out a message and get our team, I say our team, I'm talking about licensed buying sportsmen and women around the country, our team together to make sure that they're fully aware of the complexities of this particular proposition. And how it is not just a mountain lion and bobcat deal, and it can actually set a precedent for how wildlife can be interpretively managed over the course of the rest of my life, and damn sure your life and my kid's life, and and if he decides to have kids. I mean, this is the defining measure at this particular junction, that people say, oh, it's about mountain lions and bobcats. No, it's about hunting, and you can read that in the measure, and you can see why people have jumped on board to the epic proportions and the positions that they have over the course of the last 367 days. So we just appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and bring people up to speed.
Yeah, no, of course. And, guys, I just want to kind of hit on a couple things here. We talk about this, and I talk a lot about archery, but I absolutely love, obviously, the Second Amendment, staunch advocate for it. Love my guns. It's hard to post on social media about them, so I don't do a lot of posting about them. But, it's the same thing there, where things slowly get eroded by verbiage. I call it, with my kids, I call it the word game. It's almost like everyone's turned into some kind of lawyer, where a word can change the entire definition of a paragraph or a proposition, or things like that. And so we need to pay attention to that. And that's what, again, I personally don't have time, and this is what the politicians are all about, is they make sure that we don't have time, because normal people like us that have jobs, you want to go hunting this time of year, right as we're ramping up into election season. We're all wanting to hunt and be in the mountains and get away from all the crap that's going on in the news and social media and unplug, when right now we need people fighting. And so it's not that necessarily I'm saying you whoever's out there listening right now need to go and put your legs and boots on the ground. That's what Dan is doing for us. We need to support Dan and his group. And again, other groups like Howl that are doing the legwork so that we can still go about our lives and do what we need to do and also contribute to the maximum that we can in our abilities. And this is something that's very important. It's not, like you said, it's not just about bobcats and mountain lions. If you don't want to hunt them, that's fine. I'm not much of a predator hunter myself at this point, but I know the importance of it. I understand that mountain lion meat, if you haven't had it yet, is freaking delicious. And so it's not just about mounting a mountain lion. There's much more that goes into it, along with how many, if you're an elk hunter, a deer hunter, how many of those get taken down by mountain lions. There's so much more in depth that goes into it other than just if you're a mountain lion hunter or not, this is important. That's not what it boils down to. And I want to make that clear to people that it will slowly erode at your ability to go out. Because if they can say wolves and mountain lions are cute, well, an elk is pretty cute. Sounds awesome. The people that get to go out to Yellowstone don't want them dead. They want more of them, causing traffic jams and to be able to go out and see like their pets. Like that's where it's going to get to. And this is what Dan is here for, is for the education piece and fighting this stupid word game that they're playing at the political, the ballot box rather than science about what needs to be done. So with that, I want to kind of just dive right in, because initially it was about trophy hunting. So Dan and I had a conversation at the beginning. A trophy is different for every hunter. And that's what's hard to get across to these people that are, I would say, the non-hunters, because the anti-hunters, they are teamed up. They are ready to go. They may look funky and weird and sound weird with all their so-called facts and data, but they're a team. And it's hard to fight against something that is, as grouped up and linked arms as they are. And us, on the other hand, are like, well, you shoot a crossbow and I shoot a compound. Well, I shoot traditional archery. Well, I shoot a muzzle. Like, who cares? Let's drop all of that and discuss the fact that a trophy is different for everyone. So it's hard to say what trophy hunting is. For me, it's this guy. I was telling Dan, that was my first bull. He's a 5x4. Some people call him a dink. For me, the biggest bull I've ever shot. I'm excited. I killed a 3x3 this year. That was a trophy for me. After 14 days of hunting and ups and downs and roller coasters, I came home with meat and a bull. That was my trophy. For other people, it's a 400 class bull because they're looking for the most mature animal in that unit. Unfortunately, that doesn't get stressed, and you can't put that into pictures because the anti-hunters are going to pull the pictures and say, look, this guy he shoots 3 bulls a year and they're all 380 class. He's obviously out there for trophies. And they don't understand the backstory behind it of that is the mature bull, 10-year-old, 15-year-old bull in that unit. And that's what he was going after, not necessarily the antlers. So all of that, I just let me get off my soapbox here. What is being defined as trophy for this measurement or this proposition?
Well, I mean, if you read the language, Jonathan, it can be interpreted at any point in time, just like what you said. I mean, that what you have behind you, because you display it, their interpretation is a trophy. The definition of trophy in the measure, as I said, means intentionally killing, wounding, which nobody that I know intentionally wounds anything, but it's intentionally killing, wounding, stalking, pursuing, or entrapping. It doesn't say a classification. It doesn't say a species. It doesn't say a size. It doesn't say, it doesn't have to be anything of a particular mature class. They say that if you take it and you display it, and your intent is to salvage the extracurricular parts and pieces, they define that as a trophy. And while we are specifically talking about bobcats and mountain lions and lynx, which are state and federally protected in the lower 48, but while we're talking about that, it sets a case law or a preemptive strike or a progressive manner of interpretation and perspective that how do you not say that that's not the intent, is to turn around and get rid of all hunting? Otherwise, why in the hell where they turn around and try to define trophy hunting by intentionally stalking, pursuing, or killing. And that's the thing I think that the average person that we're talking to doesn't really, the average sportsman doesn't really look at this, and they go, well, and I've said this many, many times now. I mean, on 78 podcasts, 79 podcasts, you say a hell of a lot of stuff over and over. But our community needs to hear it over and over. I don't care if you've harvested a mountain lion, or you want to harvest a mountain lion, or you never harvest a mountain lion. Do you hunt waterfowl? Because they're bitching about us using dogs to hunt lions. It specifically targets the tool, the mechanism, the season, the method of take. And yeah, while they've got mountain lions and bobcats at the top of the pyramid at this point in time, how can it not be interpreted any other way that if they get rid of mountain lions and bobcats, what do you think they're going to next? Is it going to be bears? Will it be bighorn sheep, mountain goats, moose? Tris Zornio with the Colorado Sun last November mentioned in an article, why are bighorn sheep any different than mountain lions? Why are we killing our state animal? That was 2 months after this initiative dropped last year. About 3 weeks ago in the Pagosa paper, Pagosa Springs, there was a guy that wrote an op-ed to letter to the editor. Why are we allowing turkeys to be killed? Why are mountain lions any more important than turkeys? I mean, you stop thinking. It's people's perspective on it. Doesn't matter what game species. We have 78 game species in the state of Colorado.
The turkey used to be the national bird. It was going to be at one point. Yeah.
Stop and think of that. Would we be eating eagles for Thanksgiving if the turkey was a national bird? Yeah. It's a facetious statement, but it doesn't matter to the people that want to take things away because they don't want you to harvest any of it. Period. Whether your state has 22 game species, 85 game species, 78 game species like Colorado, out of 961 species of wildlife in the state of Colorado, we have 78 game species. You take 2 off, mountain lions and bobcats, then you have 76. Who's going to pay attention when you get to 50, when you get to 32, when you get to the last remaining 6 or 7 big game species? I mean, I don't care whether you harvest an appropriately managed, highly regulated swift fox or a coyote or a badger. I'm talking about fur-bearing animals, or a rabbit, which is small game in Colorado, or a squirrel or a prairie dog. If they start determining what their interpretation of trophy is and what you should be allowed to harvest and not harvest, even though the scientists, the experts, the boots on the ground people, the people that have been doing stuff for a century and a quarter, if you're starting to circumvent all of that and you define it, why do we need game agencies? I mean, we have a fish and game agency here that's Colorado Parks and Wildlife, but if they start taking away the funding mechanism and all the renewable resource management opportunities that they have, why do we need them? They don't become managers. They become stewards of preserves on a wall that you turn around and canned during September. My grandpa used to say, I remember when my grandma was canning as I was a little kid, and she would call them preserves. And he said, I don't know why we call them preserves. We should call them conserves, because we harvest them and we can them and then we eat the damn things. Preserve means you're going to turn around and put it up on the wall and you're never going to touch it. That's why we have game preserves. There's a difference between game preserves and game reserves. But the non-hunter doesn't look at that stuff. And I think that we've done a piss poor job historically of being able to educate not only our side, but that non-hunting side, and get them to understand what a trophy is. Mm-hmm. A trophy is whatever it is to that individual, no matter whether it's that bull behind you or somebody's first cow elk or a 380 bull that somebody turns around and goes and harvests in New Mexico or in Colorado or Montana or whatever. It's all a trophy. And it's really a trophy to the opposition if we do anything other than salvage the meat. They don't want us to turn around and make leather gloves or a horn mount or do elk ivory jewelry, because their interpretation is you're bastardizing the animal, and we're trying to say that we're pedestalizing, we're memorializing that animal. Mm-hmm. It's a hard deal to talk about, and especially as much as we've been talking about the last year, but to try to get people to understand why we do what we do, and we do it through a highly regulated, scientifically managed program and process. But to get people to understand that is difficult because you know what? The ultimate goal is for us to kill something.
Mm-hmm.
Kill. Now, these are the same people a lot of the times that when they talk about human life, they talk about it differently than what they do wildlife life or domestic wildlife, life. There's a hypocrisy in my opinion. And I think that we've gotten to a point to where we have a hard time defining what we do, why we do it, when we do it, where we do it, because we don't have to have it to live on. We just chose to make it part of our life to be able to sustain us and be part of our livelihood.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot to hit on there, but in reality, and I just want to highlight for people, if you've heard Dan on other podcasts or this is the first time you're hearing him, he may sound like he's going to an extreme. I'm just going to let you guys know that's not the case, because he's seeing into the future and saying what's going to happen, because it did happen, has happened. If anyone has followed anything with California, Washington, Oregon, again, the West Coast moving east, there are people that started that train of issues where they've lost, spring bear hunting, and they're going to lose other hunting things because they're just, again, being voted out by the people in the city that think of bears as these cute little, Winnie the Pooh and all these. They're not concerned about anything else other than what is being portrayed to them through some photos, a quick little ad on TV or YouTube or wherever it is that they're watching, and it's being pumped out to them because that team is so strong and linked arms that they can put out whatever they want, and they don't care about the actual facts. They've turned the facts around into something that looks like a fact, and it is semi-true to some degree, but not so much of a lie that people want to go and research it. They're just like, okay, well, that sounds about right, so I'm going to trust it. We need to be doing the same, but fighting it with facts, with actual facts, which again, what Dan's doing here, and trying to actually stop this from going forward. There's representatives that have moved from the West Coast that are now in Colorado doing what they did on the West Coast, and everyone complains about Californians moving more east and raising the housing market and all of this stuff. I'm happy for the people that are getting out of there due to the politics. It sucks because California is a beautiful state, but there's also politicians that are moving from there and taking their same political views in this aspect of conservation or anti-conservation and bringing it to Colorado, bringing it to other states more east than the West Coast. And so that's something too that I had no idea. You've brought it up a couple times in podcasts I've listened to, and I think we might have talked about it on the last one we did. Yep. But there's at least one, if not multiple, representatives that have moved over and have brought their entire team over to Colorado to fight this battle in Colorado. I don't know why Colorado, but they chose.
Well,
Colorado.
I mean, it's this has been a plan of action essentially for the last 35 years, but it's really culminated and taken a new turn about the year 2000, so 24 years ago. But in 1992, we lost the spring bear hunting with hounds and bait. All we have is fall hunting with spot and stalk now, and our bear population has increased to, tenfold. The harvest is down. We can still harvest black bears, but it's not as prolific or appropriately managed as what it once was. Now the antis, not the non-hunter, but the anti might disagree with that. They don't think we should harvest them all. But that was to a ballot initiative. It was Initiative 10 back in 1992. And then 4 years after that, there was a constitutional amendment to ban the harvest of fur-bearing animals with foothold traps, body gripping devices, or cable restraint devices. We lost that by 52 to 48%. And then most recently in 2020, the voters voted on the reintroduction of wolves, which has been, a level of consternation and headbutting and conflict and altercations over the last 4 years. And they attempted to try to capitalize off of the sentiment or the sympathy from uneducated individuals to bring this back on some sort of an attempt to ban it. So for those that don't know, back in 2019, this particular issue about bobcats was brought up to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission with this governor's appointments for the commissioners. And we defeated it unanimously in 2019. They did it again in 2020, and we defeated it again. And they did it in 21, and we forced them to withdraw their petition a month beforehand because they knew they were going to lose. Then it came back in 2022 and it ran Senate Bill 31 at the General Assembly. And we were told that we would lose 4-1, and we won 4-1. And the only other option they had was either go back to the commission and try it again, which didn't set well with them, obviously, because, I mean, one withdrawal and two losses would not bode well from a historical perspective. So they brought some players in from around the country, one being Wayne Pacelli, the former CEO of HSUS, Humane Society of the United States. And so he's helping to fund this with two new groups that he started. And then they brought in Samantha Bruger-Miller out of Washington. She's with Cats Aren't Trophies, and she's been a burr underneath the saddle in California and Oregon and Washington, and was fairly successful, but got her teeth kicked in on a couple different things. So they brought her here. And she and Pacelli and a guy by the name of Pat Craig and Julie Marshall and a plethora of other individuals are friends of the governor and the first gentleman, who are both staunch left-wing animal activists. Marlin, the spouse of the governor, is an extremist more than an activist. And so, the ideologies of certain small squeaky wheels that are looking for grease are our biggest nemesis at this point in time. And if anybody thinks that it can't happen in their state, look at your politics, look at your politicians, look at the money that flows into those politicians from specific user groups or lobbying groups. And Colorado's become the epicenter. And I honestly believe, if you look at the politics, the way things have spread out over the course of the last 25 years here, there was a book written not too long ago. It's called The Blueprint. And I might have mentioned it to you before, but going back to 2020, when we had the last Republican governor in the state of Colorado, the crap hit the fan, and the supposed Democrats, more extremists and activists, laid out a plan. It was a 20-year plan to be able to accomplish their goals by electing specific people in specific appointed position, opportunities for appointment and positions, to change the makeup of the state of Colorado, knowing full well that it would be likely spread out into other geographical regions in the western United States. So while Colorado has become the epicenter, the other states are starting to feel that bleed over. Back in 2020, there was a deciding deal on the wolf issue that we were having to deal with, because that would be a deciding factor. Were they able to accomplish their goals that started in 2000? And they started to figure out that, yeah, man, I think we're capitalizing, because you look at our General Assembly, the makeup of the legislature, you look at the elected positions, you look at appointments that those elected individuals make. This is a blue state when it comes to the elected side of things. It's got a little bit of pink or a little bit of purple in it. If you look at the individual voters, the wolf issue that passed in 2020 passed by a margin of 50.9 to 49.1%, mostly because of the urban-rural divide that we have in Colorado along the I-25 corridor. And anybody that's traveled here or that's lived here knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's other states that have that, but not to the degree that Colorado does, because of the way the mountains and the plains and the structure and the private and the public land and the natural resources and the recreation and the wildlife. And Colorado is different than some, but I don't care if you go to Wyoming, I don't care if you go to Montana, Utah, Nevada, where we're at right now. There's an urban-rural divide, and if anybody doubts that, whether you like to go to a football game in Detroit, or you want to come to Las Vegas, where we're at for a couple days, or if you want to turn around and go to Denver, or you want to go to Boise or Portland, we have that in every state. an urban-rural divide. It's just how bad is it, and how easily accomplished could the opposition get if they turn around and wanted to try to push those measures.
Yeah.
We're in a position right now, we're just trying to make sure that in Colorado that we prop up, I don't think it's a facade, Jonathan. I think we just prop up a barrier and a fortress and create a moat that makes it tougher for these like-minded individuals which are very, very limited in number. It's just that they got the resources and they put people in positions to make those decisions, and the people in power. And this is not something that can't happen in any other state. You mentioned California. There's problems in Oregon. There's problems in Washington. Colorado's become the epicenter. You get the bigger populated places, and then you start going to the smaller populated places. And I think that if we're not successful on November 5th, I think you're going to see a movement in the next 5 to 10 years that I'm not so sure it's stoppable if we don't stop it right now.
I hear you. Yeah, that's definitely something that, again, I want to reiterate to people, this is something that we need to act on now. And whether you're hearing this now, when this comes out here in September, October, you've got a month and a half to get your stuff together and make sure that we're helping Dan. And again, Dan and Hal are the two big groups that I would say definitely go over, and they're not taking your money and using it for other things like some other groups do. Unfortunately, these guys are actually boots on the ground, making sure that they're putting together the resources and the best team possible to be able to win as underdogs as they have in the past. And we really shouldn't be underdogs in this situation with how many outdoors men and women we have. Again, I say outdoors men and women, not just hunters, because this really does apply to so many things. Because let me just, put something out there too. I think you've mentioned this on other podcasts, but guys, if we get rid of hunting these animals, well, what else is considered pursuing them? Are we pursuing big game animals and bugging them, which is what they're saying that we're doing with dogs, is that we're bothering them. You can look at it from the other situation and say, look, we're creating a good fear of humans, which is what they should have and what they have had in the past. They're losing that as we move into their territories with mountain lions, bobcats, bears, etc. But what's something that we need to consider is shed hunting. For those of you that love going out, maybe shed hunting, maybe you're not big into hunting, but you love going out and shed hunting with your kids, with your family, with maybe just your dog or yourself. That's something that's considered molestation to animals by some people. And
you're taking something out of the resource too.
Yep.
They don't want you to take it because a porcupine wanted to eat it, and the mouse wanted to eat it, and the coyote wanted to chew on it.
How dare you display that on your coffee table,
yes,
or up in your office or something like that? Because for us as conservationists, and this is where you got to step out of your filter, out of your echo chamber. Because as you talk to someone, you walk into someone's house and you see an amazing antler that they picked up during the shed season. There's a story behind that, and we know that. The non-hunters, the people that we need to be sharing stuff with and portraying it in a good light. Don't share the picture of you taking a bite out of the heart of your first animal or wiping blood on your kid's face because that was his first kill. Don't do that. Those are cool stories for a certain group of people. But the non-hunter needs to understand the story behind, maybe invite them to go on maybe you're not going to kill a mountain lion, but a pursuit of a mountain lion. Who wants to go out in February in a fresh snowpack, post holing the whole way, chasing animals in -5-degree weather, to get a look at an animal and be told, oh, it's not a mature tom, we're not killing that one? How many times does that happen for a houndsman?
81%.
Exactly. Oh, you've got a statistic. I was going to say just the vast majority of the time, houndsmen love running their dogs. The dogs need to, it creates that good barrier between humans and cats, lets the cats know we're there, but also they're not killing the cat because they don't like to kill, most of the time, they don't like to kill females or even young toms. They like the big mature toms because those are the ones that are causing the most damage to other wildlife, which again, if you want to be an animal activist, we're here, God put us here with the animals around to have dominion over those animals. It doesn't say don't kill anything with sharp teeth, right? We are put here as dominion over the animals. If you're a God-fearing human being or a God-respecting human being, you understand that as well out of the Bible. We are here to have dominion over these creatures. Doesn't specify certain ones we shouldn't touch and certain ones we shouldn't pursue and any of that. There should be a healthy respect between us and them. And as long as you are being ethical, don't go out and torture them. Don't go out and tease them. Like, that kind of stuff is disgusting, I think, to any conservationist. But those are things that we need to recognize, that if you want to recreate outdoors at all and enjoy animals at all, then you should get on board with this, because they're going to end up taking away bike trails that run through, certain areas that elk happen to be in once a year. They're going to it's going to go way down that rabbit hole because we are bothering these animals. But these are the same people that will go and spend $60,000 to ship pizza from one city to another. So you tell me what makes more sense, and look a little bit behind the curtain here and see what the big plan is. I don't understand it personally. It seems a little silly to me to put your foot down and fight for something for so long that seems to not make sense to me. But the North American wildlife conservation method works. The people that came in, moved out west, obliterated the bison, obliterated mule deer, bears. It was a lot of crap that happened when we moved west. Since then, with the North American conservation, I don't know the whole name of it, but basically the way that we do conservation here in North America works because the numbers have grown, and we don't need to take that away just because someone thinks it's a cute picture of a wolf and they don't show the other side where they're eating a cow.
Well,
elk.
and two, I mean, you mentioned the part about the hounds, and with all transparency, I'm not a houndsman. I've been around hound hunting all my adult life, and I've been fortunate enough to be friends with some spectacular houndsmen ever since I was a kid. But the opponents that we face act like that we're doing something that's cruel and inhumane, and by using hounds. Dogs have been chasing cats since the beginning of the time, and just because there's a human following that dog right now, maybe with an electronic collar on it to track where the dog goes to keep it off of private property or in a regulated hunting area that has quotas, or to make sure that it doesn't cross the highway into a different unit or something. Coyotes chase lions. Bears chase lions. Wolves chase
them
lions.
off of their kill.
And lions are chased by things all the time. But as soon as you put a person behind a dog to do it, now it becomes cruel and inhumane. Mm-hmm. And for somebody that's been in the woods enough to see the interaction between wildlife and wildlife, there is no difference between wildlife and domestic life, except for the fact that we put a person behind it. And they're bitching because, well, they have 8 dogs and they're chasing these lions. Okay, they can use up to, but the hypocrisy of our enemy, and I say our enemy, not the uneducated individual voter that doesn't really understand the concept of science-based wildlife management. You ever seen 25 wolves turn around and trying to take down a buffalo? It's okay for that to happen because it's natural, because they don't think that you and I are part of the natural ecosystem. The hypocrisy that they've laid out is what we've been complicit with and been complacent with, just to say we have to defend what we do for why we do it and when we do it and where we do it. This is part of the ecosystem since the beginning of mankind. People say that the dog is man's best friend, unless you use it to turn around and try to go harvest something, because then it becomes the wildlife's worst enemy, and you're turning around and bastardizing that dog or those dogs to do something that those dogs have naturally been doing, just like a wolf or a coyote or a fox or any other canine species on the planet. But we don't do a very good job of telling that story from a human perspective. I think a lot of our comrades in arms on the wildlife side tell a really cool wildlife story, but they don't tell a very good human story. You mentioned statistics that 81% of the people in the state of Colorado that buy a mountain lion license are unsuccessful. 19% are successful. That means 81% are paying for science-based wildlife management and don't take anything home. And we joke about this as some of our commercial spots and social media spots. Can you imagine applying for a license to go grocery shopping? Can you imagine only being successful 19% of the time? Or if you're elk hunting, only being successful at the grocery store in the meat aisle 9% of the time, because 9% of the elk hunters are successful? I mean, it sounds like a facetious statement, but why is it any different? I mean, I joke that, I don't go to the grocery store often, but when we take a little trip like this, we're coming out to do some business and some podcasts, and we go to the grocery store. Have you ever watched people just go through the produce aisle and pick stuff like they're picking pinon nuts in the field? They're hunter-gatherers, whether they realize that or not. It's just that they're going to the grocery store and then looking in the meat aisle to see what they want, what's on sale, if this one has good color, if that one's got good fat. That's no different than what you do in the woods. None whatsoever. It's just that those people don't look at it that way. And I think that those are things that if we can put it into perspective to those people of why we do what we do from a hunting side of it, that then they benefit off of, because they have sustainable wildlife populations that maybe they choose to pursue, maybe they just want to know that's there, maybe they want to go watch. We have a story to tell that we haven't done a very good job of historically, because we buy a license to do it. A lot of us treat it as a vacation to be able to do it. It's not part of the absolute need to be able to survive off of that, because while we're out hunting and we're only successful 9% of the time, our wives are probably at the grocery store picking through the stuff that we don't want to turn around and go do ourselves, because we think we need to be men and we need to go, capture what we harvest. Mm-hmm. It's not any more less serious to think that what we do today is any different than what they did 300, 400, 500, 1,000 years ago. It's just that now we have people that are trying to take it away from us. Stop and think about this. I mean, this hypothetically, let's go back 1 million years, depending on how you believe in cavemen, or if they look like the Geico guy or whatever, I don't know. But can you imagine coming back to the lodge or to a cave and you dragging something back in that you and your buddies went out and you had to spear, and you had to turn around and, four of your friends got mauled, and 3 of them got killed, and you lost your dog and your horse or whatever, and you came back, and all of a sudden one of the family members said, "That's cruel. I'm not eating that." I bet their Thanksgiving dinners would have been a hell of a lot different than our Thanksgiving dinners. Mm-hmm. And you got to put some humor in some of this stuff, because just look at the people that we're talking to, the hypocrisy that they have. They're driving cars. Yep. They're living in houses. They're utilizing the same space, the same air, the same energy, the same technologies as what we are using. It's just that we choose to continue to go back to our hunter-gatherer roots and pursue, from a predator standpoint, a lot of other things. And there again, I'm not just talking about mountain lions and bobcats. I'm talking about 78 game species in Colorado. What would we do as an agency or a society or as a community if they left mountain lions and bobcats there and wanted to ban grouse and pheasants, or wanted to ban turkeys, like that guy wrote the article? Would we come together? Would it be easier to do? Would it be more recognizable?
The thing is too, that's not off the table, because if you're looking to display your turkey fan or your grouse feathers, or this, I mean, you could even, what's a display? Could it be
pictures?
The cutting board as you're serving the meat? Is the meat now a trophy? Like, and it seems ridiculous. Even in my head, I kind of laugh a little bit about it, but it's ridiculous to me that wolves got reintroduced when they were already in Colorado. I laugh about Utah too, because I'm like, there's no way we don't have wolves. Idaho has wolves. Wyoming has wolves. Colorado has wolves. It's not like they get to the border and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to deal with those stupid Mormons." Like, they're in Utah, and so like they're here. And the thing is too, like, reintroducing them, quote unquote. I mean, how many, how much cattle's been killed, how many domestic dogs and animals have been killed. On top of that, when a wolf runs a cat off of their kill, what does that cat do? It's still
That's
got to
true.
eat. It goes and kills another one, right? So they don't care about how many tags they filled. They don't have tags, you know.
No.
And so that's the thing that people aren't looking at. And on top of all of that, the most humane way for an animal to die is by a human being. Even if you do shoot it a little bit further back than you want, it's going to die faster than a wolf eating it or than a cat eating it. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know how cats usually kill pretty quick, but wolves and bears, they like to kind of sit on their stuff and eat it while it's alive. You know, for people that don't think about that, they don't portray that. They portray the cute little yawning wolf.
Because you and I are part of that. You and I are part of that equation.
Yeah.
If you take us out, they believe Mother Nature should be able to continue to do what it does, however it does, whenever it does. And to be honest with you, I mean, there's something about this internal primal instinct with me, and I don't mind somebody getting into a fist fight. But 9 guys on one, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I don't like it when you got 15 wolves on one elk. Mm-hmm. I don't like it. I don't mind one. I don't know what it is. It's something inside of me. I mean, have you ever watched? Have you ever watched 50 baboons turn around and attack a leopard, or 25 hyenas attack a leopard or a lion? It turns my stomach.
Yeah.
Now that's Mother Nature. It's the one-on-one for some reason, and I think that comes from the primal instinct of us, of what we do. There ain't 10 of us going out there and shooting arrows like they used to run buffalo off a cliff. There's one. It's you against a particular species, a method of take in a hunt, and you get the opportunity to do that in a very limited level over the course of your life.
Yep.
If I get a chance, and I was talking about this to my wife the other day, I just turned 61 years old. If I get a chance to hunt until I'm 75, chances are I'm going to have somewhere around 60 to 75 days left to hunt elk in my life. Because some I'm going to be successful on, and some are going to be 5-day seasons, and some are going to be 12-day seasons. But I'm probably going to have around 75 days left the rest of my life to turn around and hunt. Am I going to be successful 9%? Well, my history personally has been more successful than that. But the older that I get, I know that's probably not more likely. And I don't have the resources to be going around and hunting 380 bulls everywhere. So there's going to be a lot of cows and spikes and 4 points in that. But we don't do it, 6 or 8 or 10 of us or 12 of us to turn around and try to sit in tree stands and ambush one elk to come through. If we did, it wouldn't matter, because the way the seasons are managed and the way the animals are managed, we still have one license per person to be able to harvest that in a regulated manner to where you have sustainable populations in perpetuity. That goes into play over the last quarter of a century, the century and a quarter of the North American model of wildlife conservation. It doesn't make it any more pretty, because your ultimate goal, as I said earlier in this conversation, is to kill something. It's to harvest it. And the opposition says, if you take a picture, if you salvage the hide, if you glorify your dominance over that, you are now a bastard, and they're pedestalizing that animal. Well, we're trying to memorialize that animal by salvaging just what you have behind you. And if you look at the stuff that most of our hunters have, whether it's in the garage or their basement or in a trophy trophy room, that's a recollection of a memorial of 3-dimensional memories that people have decided to salvage. More often than not, 9% of the time. I know guys that have hunted elk for 30 years that have killed 4. They weren't just doing it to feed their families, but when they fed their families, they did it with pride, and they did it with grace and respect. And just so happened, they saved the hide and they made some gloves. So they saved the teeth and made some jewelry, or they mounted the head on the wall. Who gives a rat's ass? But what they've done is they've turned around and tried to trophyize what we do, to bastardize us and to marginalize our perception and our perspective on the landscape. And I think that those are things that we just don't do a very good job of propping that stuff up, because we're more interested in the plan for the tag, getting ready for the hunt, trying to pursue our quarry, hopefully get something, then bring it back, get it processed, Maybe get it mounted. Maybe just salvage the horns. Maybe they're just hanging in the rafters of the garage. Maybe you do a horn mount out of them. Maybe you cut it up and make damn knife handles out of it. The opposition doesn't want us to do anything with any of it because they don't want us to kill it. They don't want you to use it, period. They want you to turn around. They say if you harvest it, you should eat it, but nothing else should be salvaged because it's trophy. What's the difference between an elephant foot and an elk foot? If it's dead for wildlife management purposes, why not be able to salvage every single piece and part off of that thing and be able to memorialize that animal as opposed to putting it in a damn dump or turn around and burying it or bastardizing somebody who's going to utilize the thing? Nobody harvests anything just for the sake of harvesting it. It's all of it combined. And I think those are things that we have the opportunity to be able to turn around and prop up on our own level. And if we don't, we're going to keep doing what we're doing is going to the ballot and dealing with legislation and deal with commissions.
And I think too, like anyone that's come across an elk with its head cut off, and the full carcass is there, things like that, it makes you sick. I don't know of any true conservationists, outdoorsmen and women that would appreciate someone doing that. That's
poaching.
It's
illegal.
Poaching. Yeah. Or even if it is in season and you just cut the head off, like that's still disgusting. That is awful. It's not use of the resources that are being provided to you. That is, it's something that I don't think anyone is on board with. And so, things like that, it's hard to get that point across. You're not going to get it across to the anti-hunter. It's again, going to the people in the middle, the non-hunter. And we say uneducated, not because they're calling people stupid, but because they just don't have the time. They're the people that are punching the clock. Their fun time is playing video games with their kids, or like they have a very small bubble and where they hang out, and they don't get into the outdoors and enjoy it. And if they do, they go to Yellowstone when all the elk are in the valley and they get to watch them, and they complain that there's not enough bears there to see. They need to train their bears better, or
you saw that story.
They need to train their bears more so they could come down and see it. Like those are the kind of people that live in that bubble. And again, nothing against them. They just haven't had the exposure and education because whether the algorithm's not pushing it to them because it's not what's important to them, or they just have not been a part of that family. And even if they live in, Denver or Salt Lake City, where we have these amazing mountains surrounding us, they just don't get out of that bubble. And so that's where we need to come in, and you can pick and choose. Like, again, I share certain videos, experiences, and pictures with certain groups of people, but the other people that maybe I understand aren't as big into hunting and understand how cool it is that my arrow went through the heart. You don't show that picture of the broadhead design in the heart to people that don't hunt. You show that to your hunter friends. Other than that, you explain the story and everything behind it, what went into the hunt, to the people that are the non-hunters, so they can understand that it may not be important to them, but it's something that is extremely important to you. That is your Super Bowl. That is your, whatever relates to that person, share it with them in that manner and through that filter and through that lens. And then, of course, I want to get into this now of what we can do. Again, we're all busy. Everyone has their lives. I know from the moment I got back from my elk hunt, I had so many texts and phone calls when I got back into service. I didn't get a chance to get back to people for like 2 days. I had some people wondering if I was still up on the mountain because I got back and my kids got off the bus 15 minutes after I got home. They all had their activities. I had work to catch up on. I'm still catching up on, all of that happens to all of us. And that's where Dan and his group comes into play. And I keep bringing up Howl because I love the way that they work.
Charles and Mike are both great. John.
Yeah. And how they get through to the politicians, and all you have to do is go sign up for their newsletter and they will do the legwork for you and make sure that things get through to the politicians. So let's get into some actions people can take, whether it's donations or time, or what else we can do in our limited time. If everyone contributes 5 minutes here, $1 here, whatever, it's going to be way more than what you guys have already received. So What can we do?
Well, and because of our fight for the last 367 days on this, we've gone through highs and lows and peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows and all the cliche terms. People have been wanting to know what to do and how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. And we're at a point now to where, as of today, and depending on when this podcast airs, we'll be at 44 days, I believe, from doomsday or from the day of celebration. And what they can do between now and then is, if they see stuff on social media, share it and make a comment of it and share it to your friends. Share it to your non-hunting friends. We're putting out some really, really good content, but we get criticized from some within our circles, that we're just talking to the choir. Quit talking to the sportsmen and start talking to the people. Well, when are you going to start talking to the public? And we don't chime back on everything, and the reason being is because you just mentioned it, Jonathan. When you're gone and you come back, you have a ton of wheelbarrow full of stuff that you have to deal with, but we don't have the means to be able to turn around and answer every single thing that you get on social media about. And this is not a slight toward anybody, but if you're a normal sportsman and you're following us on social media through Instagram or Facebook or on YouTube or something, and you're not seeing what we're kicking out to the public, it's because you're not the target audience. You're not a 25-year-old single mom of two in downtown Denver that doesn't have a car and doesn't have a yard and lives in a flat, and her kids go to some school that they're bused to or they can walk to or whatever. You're not the target audience. If you're watching any of our social media stuff, you are not the target audience. The target audience is being appropriately hit and addressed through other means, because in today's environment and the digital technology that we have, we can hit those people. We can find the analytics and the algorithms that we need to be able to turn around and pop up on their phone because they go to a certain location, or the analytics that they've come up with of how they shop and where they shop and who they are and where they go and what they eat and you can find all of that. The average person that we deal with maybe understands, maybe doesn't understand that. But if you live in central Colorado in an agriculturally related community and you're following us on Instagram or Facebook, you're probably not going to see what we're kicking out in downtown Boulder or downtown Denver. Now, we will be doing some comprehensive integrated broadcast television, out-of-home advertising, digital and social media type stuff. There'll be some print, there'll be some radio. But we just 2 weeks ago got Proposition 127. It was on the 9th of September when we got that. We had people asking us these same questions on the 13th of June and the 15th of March. Why aren't I seeing your message? Well, we weren't trying to message those people except for a decline to sign campaign. It was to hopefully get them not to sign the petition to get it on the ballot, which is another side story is on itself, as I mentioned, because of what the governor did on
short
oil
story
and gas.
On that, basically, just short, kind of wrapping it up. My understanding of it is, and for people out there that don't know, again, this is kind of how lobbying and politicians can go. They can literally pay people to go and gather signatures.
Yes.
That's really what's happening. They are paying a firm to go and gather signatures because they can't be bothered to spew their own bullshit. And they can't be bothered to go out there and lie to the people's faces. So they're paying someone else to go do it.
Well,
they
and
can't
what happened?
Pay for signatures. They can pay for people to go and gather signatures.
Yeah, and what happened
That's disgusting.
It was a volunteer signature gathering process because our opposition could not afford the fee, which at that point in time was $18 to $21 a signature, is what the firms were getting paid to go get.
Wow.
That was on 2 oil and gas ballot initiatives. Back in late April, first part of May, the governor sat down with the oil and gas industry and made a compromise to where if they did certain things on severance taxes, that the oil and gas industry would not pursue a ballot initiative or 2 ballot initiatives this year. Those oil and gas companies and the lobbying efforts were paying to get signatures through this firm. They weren't paying individuals. They're paying the firm to go get signatures from individuals. So you weren't buying signatures from people. You were buying signatures from people to go get signatures from people.
Mm-hmm.
But when the governor made those two provisions and those compromises and took those two ballot initiatives off, those signature gathering, circulating companies had no client in the oil and gas industry because those two items would not be on the ballot any longer. When that happened, those firms that were trying to gather signatures had no client. So they went to the opposition, to the proponents, and said, hey, we know we were $18 to $20 a signature over here. We don't have that client anymore, but we can gather your signatures for $4. The opposition, or the proponents of Initiative 91, which is now Proposition 127, couldn't afford $20 a signature, but they could damn sure come up with the money for $4 a signature. When that compromise happened in the governor's office, the opposition was sitting at around 40 to 50,000 signatures, and they were running out of time because we had run the clock out and we had spent all the money that we needed to spend through the appropriate measures that I previously mentioned. But they still had a couple months left, and at $4 a piece, they could turn around and canvass or hire those canvassing companies to get out there and collect whatever signatures they needed. So they needed 128,238 valid signatures. They collected around 188,000. Of which 140 were actually valid. There was a roughly 48 or 50,000 signatures that were not valid. That's how we got into the position that we're in right now, because we were kicking their butt until the compromise was made on the money side of it. And that's where we got into the position. So we had a decline to sign campaign, and we were doing very effective with it. But when you turn around and cut the price of something down by 75%, mm-hmm. especially,
it makes me wonder what kind of money it took to get him to cut it down there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of speculation behind that. And
I know you can't say that per se, but I'll say it. That sounds like some shady crap and a little bit of under the table kind of getting paid on the side kind of deal. Yeah. But that's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, and so that's where we're at right now, and getting to the point to where trying to figure out how to maneuver and going back to criticism or scrutiny from our side of the fence. Mm-hmm. So, what are you doing with the money? When are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? People need to understand that running a ballot measure or trying to defeat a ballot measure is something to where it's a significant amount of money that the attorneys, the independent expenditure committees, the accounting, the oversight and the reviews, the strategy companies, the decline to sign side of things, a little bit of travel here and there. I mean, the travel that I've done this year to be able to turn around and do messaging and outreach and fundraising and podcasts and be away from home and spend as much time as I have on the road, it's the least costly component of all of this, but it's necessary to be able to do it. I mean, my wife and my son and myself have sacrificed our entire business and our entire life over the course of the last 12 months, and I'm not griping or complaining about it, but this is not a venture that is not costly. This is a costly venture to where when you get a bill and the attorney is charging you $550 to read 3 emails from the Secretary of State that cost them 20 minutes, and you do that 15 times. And then you have the strategy meeting. And then you have to travel to turn around and go meet with some fundraisers, some potential donors or contributors. Or then you have to go speak in front of a different crowd. Or you're trying to turn around and message for a different reason. You look at the accounting side of things, and because of the oversight and the review and the compliance and the Secretary of State and the Attorney General's office, and what you have to do is not like you're throwing up a garage sale sign and saying, hey, come here, we got a fire sale on Saturday. No, you're trying to raise money to be able to be operational and to build a strategy and a plan of attack up. And so when we see the scrutiny on social media, I don't take it personally, but I want to educate people to the point to where they understand this is not something that everybody is going to see at every single flipping level, because you're not the target audience. If you are the target audience, you're probably going to see the majority of it in some capacity. Mm-hmm. But if you're not the target audience, you're going to see some bleed over. You're going to see some overflow to some degree. It'll be some on television. It might be on the light rail wraps. It might be on the news. It might be on broadcast. It might be on, other forms of digital, whether it's Hulu or Netflix or anything that's out there. But there's things that people can do to get engaged, and that's where what I was saying about share the stuff to the people. And I mean, Jonathan, look, I'm not a social media guru, but we built a pretty good following over the course of the last 10 or 11 months of just trying to educate the individuals. When we get 1 million or 1,200,000 views in a month on a social media platform, and then you turn around and look, and some of that stuff was shared 350 times out of 1 million, that's not very good for us to be able to distribute.
So I'll say that too. You know, that's a problem across the board. There's a podcast I listen to, and for people out there that don't know about the Sean Ryan show, this is outside of hunting, but just in general, great podcast. He was trying to do, I can't remember what exactly it was, but anyway, it was a great cause. They had the similar thing where he had like over 6 million something views, and they got, I think it was like 15,000 signatures on this thing that he was trying. And he's like, and he went on and he was like, look, guys, I don't usually complain, but this is ridiculous. And this is why nothing ever gets done. You want to say here, we had over 6 million views across the board and got 15. And then all of a sudden they got up to close to like 100,000, because people got called out on their bullcrap. But it's a problem across the board where we're, swipe. Oh, that's good information, Dan. Thank you, swipe. And then you got the next reel, and that's a major issue for us as well, as we keep thinking. And I'm saying you're doing legs, boots on the ground, leg work, and very much appreciate that. But what people need to understand is we still need to do our part. And it may seem silly, and maybe you share it and you only have 100 followers. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. That's 100 more people that are going to see it than did it. And there's going to be somewhere in there that at least 1 or 2 of those people goes and takes some action because they were struck by that message that you shared. And that 1 or 2 people is more than 0.
You're going to hit somebody that we don't. Mm-hmm. We all have these different circles in these networks, and whether it's on social media or out of social media, you know how many times that I've got friends of mine that older guys, older than my dumbass, that don't do social media, but I'll find something on social media, and then I'll turn around and text it to those guys, and then they see it for the first time, and they're like, "Where did you get that? My God, that's just exhilarating. That's just magnificent." Well, they don't have the access to some of the stuff that we're utilizing, nor did I previously to this campaign. I mean, I didn't utilize it, but somebody would text me things. So take the time to text it, take the time to share it, take the time to comment on it, take the time to turn around and banter back and forth with some of your comrades in arms that might be adversarial in position because you're a bow hunter and they're not, or because you're a lion hunter and they hunt waterfowl with upland bird dogs or whatever. We have something at our disposal that we can turn around and capitalize on that we didn't do very well over the last 20, 25 years, except for showing the grip and grin type photos or having a video when we're sitting in the turkey blind and our kid fell off the stool or something. I mean, we have something there that we should be able to utilize the tools in the toolbox to our benefit, because some of that's going to play over and feed over to the non-hunter, or maybe to a hunter that doesn't understand why we hunt with hounds, or why we hunt with waterfowl dogs, or why we turn around and pursue predators. If you don't do any of that stuff, those are still the target audience as well. Yep. It might not be from the target audience we're paying advertisement to turn around and get them to understand how to vote, but how we actually live and what we do to manage and what we do to sustain our livelihood and our wildlife resources. There's something there that this is a learning curve, and this is part of the Howl for Wildlife guys and us trying to create this mechanism that is even flowing and that's a solid tool that we can capitalize off of them. They can capitalize off of us with a victory, and we build a playbook and a roadmap that everybody can be able to utilize. And that comes from the funding, from the messaging, from the outreach, to the utilization of the tools, being able to continue to tell your story, and then build that network up to where, oh yeah, when somebody's coming after the muzzleloading hunters, I could turn around and support that. Or somebody's coming after the bow hunters, I could support that. We don't have that holistically throughout this community. We have found that because the majority of our organizations we're all members of are 501c3s. Yep. They are charitable organizations. We're not. Mm-hmm. We're a 501c4, and our mission is to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management. Period. You won't see any grip and grins on our stuff. There's no memberships on our stuff. We're at the Capitol. We're preparing for the next legislative session, the next round of commission meetings. We're trying to fight this ballot initiative. We care what everybody thinks and what they want to do. But if we don't win in November and we don't do it with the help of everybody, every, God-given American sportsmen and women out there, I don't know where we'll end up. Not just from a Colorado standpoint, but other states and other species and pursuits as well.
It's just, flat out, it's moving east. It is. It's kind of a sweeping wave that we're seeing the glimpse of it there in Colorado. They're hitting pretty hard, but it's hitting other states as well out here out west, and it will move east. That's a fact of the matter. They've proven that over the last 20, 30 years, and it will continue to move that way. And we may not see it until we're older. Our kids may be the ones that see it, but you guys are setting up that blueprint on how to fight it, which is awesome. So I just kind of want to get back to, how we can help, what we can do. Either we can donate, which I will leave the link down below where they can find, where they can donate to you guys. If that's something that you're able to do financially, donate, I don't know if there's a minimum or not, but, just $1, $10, $1,000, whatever you have that you feel in your heart that you need to donate, you can do that. There's ways that you can donate your time, and also, of course, like I said, get signed up with Howl for Wildlife, get signed up for the newsletter that you guys put out. That's the other thing too, is with social media sharing, but a lot of people want to complain about how hunting, firearms, archery, a lot of that stuff doesn't get pushed in the algorithm as much. And I used to, I'm not gonna lie, I used to be like, well, they're literally, and I have been blocked a couple times, and that's a legitimate block. But we can't sit and complain that our message isn't getting out if we aren't sharing it. They can't stop you from sharing it unless they flat out block the video. Create your own algorithm per se. Put it out there for yourself. And again, who cares about the numbers? It's the same for me of like, I don't care if it's a 380 class bull or the 3x3 that I shot. Like, that doesn't matter to me. Your numbers of followers does not matter. You're going to hit somebody that didn't get to see it before. Or like you said, send a text to somebody or send the email link to somebody. If you're into email, I'm wearing a Montana Knife Company hat. There's a guy I sat down with at one of my shows that I was working, and he saw I had the hat on, and he was like, oh yeah, I love these guys. And I said, oh, did you find them on social media? He was like, actually, no. One of my friends shared it with me, and then I got on their email list. He doesn't do social media, which kind of blew my mind because MKC's all over social media, and he found them through email and through a friend. It's the same thing here, guys. Your word of mouth is going to change at least one person's mind, if not multiple people, and that one person might be the gateway to the next person that is going to make an even bigger impact. So you never know. You really never know. But share it with other people. That's an amazing way to impact this. So donations of money, time, sharing on social media. Is there anything else that we can do to help?
Well, you mentioned the donations, and it's gotten to the point now to where, donations have been remarkable, but the big donations, as late as what they are, they're starting to come in pretty significantly. And without those big donations, we wouldn't be able to pull off what we have. Without the smaller donations from $20 to $5,000, we wouldn't have been able to turn around and get to the point to where we're at this point in time. As I mentioned, the monthly expenditures just to be able to turn around and do this, to be compliant, and to make sure that you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and you're in code. You're not in code violation of the Secretary of State or the Attorney General or the IRS or a variety of other things that you have to be compliant with. Go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The Colorado chapter of SCI is running another raffle for us, but you can go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com. The one that they ran back in May and June generated a significant amount of money, and that was a mountain lion hunt and a mount that was done by Salida Gun Shop for the Gunworks gun. The mount was done by Whitaker Brothers Outfitting, the hunt was done by Whitaker Brothers Outfitting, and the mount was done by Ovis Wildlife Taxidermy. That generated about $150,000. That's something that somebody gets a chance to donate and gets a chance for something. The raffle that they're doing right now, that if you go to our website, SaveTheHuntColorado.com, it's another Gunworks gun that is done by Gunworks and Salida Gun Shop. And there's also a whitetail hunt in Saskatchewan for 2 that are being raffled off, and all the money is going to go to CRWM to help turn around and provide the parallel ancillary campaign to enhance and accentuate what the Wildlife Deserve Better campaign. And the reason I mentioned Wildlife Deserve Better, that's the issues committee. I chair the issues committee, but Pac West Strategies with Mark Truex, our campaign manager, is in charge of that, but I chair the committee. WildlifeDeserveBetter.com. That's the issues committee. That's the one, excuse me, that says vote no on 127. The Save the Hunt is the beginning stages of what we started 7 years ago, but culminated with our efforts on September 22nd of last year because of the initiative being dropped on this particular issue. You can go to Howl for Wildlife. You can go to a variety of other organizations that are trying to help in some form or fashion. But the 2 that are running the campaign as far as messaging, outreach, parallel movement, and fundraising are Save the Hunt, which is Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, or Wildlife Deserve Better, which is the Issues Committee. Those 2 is where all the efforts need to be turned. And if you don't want to do a donation, go buy a raffle ticket. If you don't want to turn around and buy a raffle ticket, get on the shop site and buy a t-shirt or a mug or a hat. All the money goes to the fight. And I can tell you right now, Jonathan, that the outreach community-wide from around the country, from around the industry, from the nonprofits to the professional entities and industry leaders is nothing less than remarkable. The individual contributions from $20 or $5, we've got people doing $5 a week, $5 a month. We've got people doing $20 a week. We've got people doing $1,000 a month. People in the industry that have skin in the game, whether they're lion outfitters, maybe they're a taxidermist, maybe they're a landowner in the state of Colorado, maybe they just like to hunt Colorado and they got friends that are outfitters and they know that those outfitters rely on this sort of background and livelihood to maintain their standard of living and their way of life. This is an opportunity for every person who ever wanted to hunt Colorado or who applies to hunt for Colorado or has hunted Colorado in the past or hunts Colorado on a regular basis, whether they're a resident or non-resident alike, to take advantage of the opportunity to be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. The opposition is so well funded to the tune of $1 million or $2 million or $3 million every single time you turn around, and we can match every single bit of that, especially with the small donations and the major contributions, that once this is done and over with, we'll be able to reveal just how magnificent that's been. But I can tell you that there's nothing that makes me happier to see the enthusiasm of individuals from around the country to say, you know, I've hunted Colorado for the last 15 years. I've never seen a mountain lion, and I don't really care if I ever hunt a mountain lion. But here's $1,000. Or my brother lives in Colorado, and they've had mountain lions on their Ring doorbell, you know, their camera, 6 or 8 or 10 or 15 times. Or they lost a dog to a mountain lion. Or they see mountain lions where they never used to see mountain lions before. Or they were stalked by a mountain lion during a family hike with the dog. They're not hunters. People that are contributing because of why? The network, the outreach, the messaging, talking to the congregation, talking to your neighbors, talking to your co-workers, talking to your family, talking to your business leaders, talking to your legislators. Our people can do any one of those things to make sure they're part of the equation. If you live in Colorado and you want some signage for your yard or some stickers, look on social media and check us out at c.r.w.m on Instagram or Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management on Facebook. There's guys around the state now that are actually doing and distributing some yard signs, and we're seeing the billboards go up, and we're seeing the big stuff, the big commercial stuff going up and around Denver. There's going to be a rally at the Colorado State Capitol on October 18th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m., 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on October 18th. That'll be posted online. pay attention to any of the podcasts that you see going around, whether I'm on them or whether I'm not on them, because it's a collective message of individuals trying to get together because they know 44 days from now there's going to be a magnificent turnout. And if we're unsuccessful, you better watch out in your state or your method of take or your species. If we're successful, the antis better watch out, because we have built up an armament and an army that is undeniably the most formidable thing that we've seen, at least in my adult life. You know, there's been big things that have happened in different states and so forth, but not at this level when it's come to outreach and messaging and fundraising and continuity and collaboration. Nothing. And so keep just, you know, you talk about save the hunt. It's not about saving the mountain lion and the bobcat hunt. It's really about save the hunt. Mountain lions and bobcats just happen to be the top of the spear, the top of the pyramid at this point in time. But everybody has the ability to be able to turn around and be a participant at this level, whether they contribute financially or otherwise. And you see on social media right now, look up any of the stuff where there's tailgate wraps, where guys can get entire wraps of their tailgate to say, vote no on 127. These guys are doing that themselves. There's no organization that's paying for that stuff. They're sending the information and trying to get people to go to the wildlifedeservebetter.com website. But this is something that we can all be part of. The problem that we have is from September 2nd or even earlier than that till about November 30th, it's hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
So our guys are out in the field.
Yep.
I'm hoping that people listen to this before they turn around and before November 5th so they can see what's going on.
Exactly.
But, you know, that's one of our biggest problems is we are in the field. Mm-hmm. We are pursuing the game.
Well, and they know that. They know
that. You know, I mean, stop and think of election day was like, you know, the 15th of March.
Yeah.
It'd be the Ides of March. It'd be like Caesar, but think of it as the 15th of March. There wouldn't be anybody in the field doing anything except for a few lion hunters. So people have the ability to be able to share the message, participate in the rallies and the fundraising, participate in the messaging. And there's a ton of stuff out there from places that we aren't kicking out, but are sharing our message and spreading it far and wide. And just make sure that you turn around and do the same thing to everybody, because everybody needs everybody at this point in time. And if you think it doesn't have to do with you, well, you got another thing coming, because I guarantee it's a hell of a lot more broad and a hell of a lot more deep than the average person that understands or realizes.
Exactly. Well, I definitely, I appreciate that, Dan, and I'm going to second that as I have throughout this whole thing of just, guys, make sure, I understand you're out in the field. I hope you're being successful. You know, Dan called me and I called him back right after I'd busted a herd of elk while I was up on the mountain, and I was not in a good place, but I was like, you know what, we're going to get you on the podcast when I get back into town. But, you know, it's something that's super important. And again, whatever you can do, money, time, whatever kind of investment you can give, we definitely appreciate that. And Coloradans will appreciate it. You and your, you know, future posterity will appreciate it, whatever state you're in. And again, you know, this is just the start, and having put together such an amazing team, such an amazing army of just, I mean, the antis have poked the proverbial bear at this point, you know, and they've woken it up, and hopefully we continue to keep that momentum rolling, and we're able to push back, not just win this one, but continue to push back towards other issues that we've lost, and other issues that they're trying to attack. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to leave all the links down below where you can go and donate. You can find the raffles. You can get in on any of the ways that you can. Go find them on social media. I'm going to leave those links down below as well. And get in on this fight. It's not just for Coloradans. It's not just about mountain lions and bobcats. This is our future. And this is our present, obviously, and our future. And we want to make sure we nip it in the bud now, and we are able to fight back, not just play defensive like we have been for the last 20 to 30 years. So with that being said, again, Dan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, go follow him. Do what you can. Fight back. Save the hunt. Enjoy the outdoors as much as you can this fall. Good luck on your tags out there as well. Get after it. Enjoy that fight as well as you're out there getting after the animals. And with that being said, like I always say, guys, get out, live your life, and love it.
Thanks, Jonathan.
All right, now that you've heard that conversation, again, I challenge you guys to go and look up this information when you have some time. If not, hopefully you trust me, you trust Dan, you've heard him on many other podcasts. We're not just trying to scare you. Maybe in a way we are, because we don't want you to lose your rights and your privileges. If you are in Colorado, make sure you vote no on this. Don't just sit back and do nothing. Make sure you vote no on Prop 127. If you are out of Colorado, make sure you reach out to your family that's in Colorado, your friends that's in Colorado, because there's so many of us that enjoy going to Colorado and enjoying the outdoors, and we don't want to lose that for us, for our kids, for our grandkids, and their forward. So go check it out. Make sure you vote no. Go donate your time, money if you have that available, and at least a vote or spreading the message. Just share this on social media, wherever it may be, and make sure you reach out to Dan and let him know that you are supporting him and his movement and all the work that he has done. Him and Howl for Wildlife, his wife, all of them are working so hard, putting boots on the ground, where, you and I have 9 to 5s and we have things going on. We can still donate time and money and a vote. So make sure you get it out there, get the message, spread it out there, guys. I appreciate you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. And of course, get out, live your life, and love it.